What's going on, everybody? Today we're going to talk about the mindset and the steps that you guys can take to finish your games, so stick around. Are you guilty of having multiple unfinished games sitting on a hard drive somewhere, just gathering dust? Today we're going to talk about the tools and the mindset and the steps that you can take to pull those games out, dust them off, and get them finished. This video is going to have two separate sections, talking about both mindset and the steps that you can take to structure your work and systemize yourself to actually get the games finished. But first, we're going to talk about mindset. First and foremost, you need to be comfortable with the fact that games take a long time, so you're going to have to learn patience. No successful game was ever made overnight, and you need to be comfortable with the fact that some work might not be immediately visible, and you might not get that immediate result. Learning and practicing patience is a critical step for any developer, and having this in your repertoire, in your mindset, really will put you leaps and bounds ahead of most of your peers. Second is consistency. If you have it within your mind that you are a strong, consistent worker, whether that be every day, the weekdays, the weekends, or you schedule it in for times that are suitable to you, if you have this in your mind and you practice consistency as a habit, you'll start to see that task list go down and down and down until eventually you've finished your game. If this is difficult, you need to be aware that consistency is key and you need to force yourself to do it. However you do it is up to you. Like I said, schedule it in if you have to, cancel plans if you have to, but whatever you do, make sure you dedicate consistent time, the same days of the week, the same hours that you can use to chip away at your game. This, if you practice it, will help you finish your game. Third thing that you need to keep in mind is that this is going to be a game that you're going to release. Nothing keeps someone on track more than having accountability. If you market this game, if you're active on social media, if you have an active following, they're going to expect trailers, they're going to expect content, and they're going to expect a finished game with a release date. Having this in mind from the get-go and planning to release this game to a specific demographic on a specific platform or platforms will help keep you on track. You will develop to that plan, and those fans, potential customers, will keep you accountable as well. Another thing to keep within your mindset is, what am I working on and is it a priority? Is what I'm working on right now matter towards the end game? Is it really going to enrich the entire experience? Is it critical, or is it a nice to have? Developers are notorious for this. It's called feature creep. If you think you're immune to it, you're not. Everyone gets this. What you need to do is you need to check yourself constantly, and you need to say, is this part of the plan? Is this part of the original design? Is this going to take me too long? If you find yourself steering off track, create yourself a folder, call it insert name, sequel. In this sequel folder, you're going to put any of the features that you've come up with and you're going to save it for later. If what you're going to do is you're going to focus on what you've committed yourself to developing, you're going to finish it, you're going to release it, and then, depending on a number of points, like how many sales you make, how devoted your fans are, how committed you are to continuing the series, all of these things come into play when it comes into deciding whether or not to continue the series and make a sequel. Just be aware that there is the Pareto principle, which states that 80% of the result is generated by 20% of the work. And it's true for game development because 80% of the work actually turns out to be polish. So by not managing your priorities, you're going to be blowing out your game. You're going to be vastly blowing out the 80% of polish that you're going to need to do at the end of that game. And you're going to lose motivation. You're not going to finish it. Point of the matter is, keep yourself focused, work on what is priority, and actually get the game done. Another thing that you need to train into your mindset is resilience and persistence. These are particularly hard skills for you to grow because you are directly accountable for both of them. It is very easy to stop when you encounter something that you don't have a solution to. It's very hard to pick yourself up when you have failed at something time and time again. The key message here is, do not scrap this game. Do not get sparkly object syndrome or, ooh, look, a butterfly syndrome. But what you need to keep in mind is that it's all about execution. But if you're flaky with your ideas, then you are never going to finish something. Lastly, what you need to cut out of your mindset is perfectionism. It is an infinite loop and it will get you bogged down in tasks which are unimportant and you will actually get diminishing results. What you need to learn is that when something is good enough, set it down, move on. Only ever come back to something when you know something really does need rework. If you've had to set down a task and move on because of time constraints or because of what your weekly schedule looks like, then fair enough. Come back to it and finish the task, but please don't get bogged down in it. If you learn to control that inner OCD in all of our brains, where, oh, one pixel is off, or this animation looks slightly off, or this bit of code could be refactored and could be made a bit more efficient. If you can get past all of that, you'll find yourself making more and more progress towards finishing your game. These things can all happen at the end once you have a releasable build. That's what optimization is for, that's what testing is for. Now that we've gotten through all of the mindset tasks, let's take a quick look at what you can actually do, steps that you can take, that you can actually structure your work so you can make progress towards finishing your game. Now, first is scope. Now, by scope, I mean you need to list out all of the major features in your game, all of the minor features in your game, and then all of the things that you think will need to be polished within your game. And usually that list tends to be a bit shorter because you don't know what you don't know yet. Now, depending on the size of your team, with major features, you shouldn't have more than 3. And I say this because, like I said earlier, people get bogged down in feature creep. Everyone thinks, oh, wouldn't it be cool if, or why don't we do something like? But most of the time, for most developers, we don't have the resources of a AAA developer. We don't have the hundreds of millions of dollars to spend on developing, marketing, distributing your game. So key is pick 3 or less, put them all together, and make sure that they all work together. The second part of defining your scope is understanding your major features and then picking out minor features which help to complement those major features, which help to really put a unique spin, twist, or your own flavor on your game. With polish, the same things always usually apply, which is UI design, menus, sometimes sound design, testing, bug fixing. Put all of these down, but for now, you're not going to be aware of how long these things are going to take. The second thing that you need to do is you need to define your milestones. How I tend to do it is using the traditional software development structure like prototype, alpha, beta, then testing, and then release. So what you need to do is you need to define your milestones for each of these stages. Prototype tends to be what your major features are and how they interact with each other. It doesn't have to look pretty, it's usually boxes and cubes. It's hideous. With alpha, you're starting to put some polish on those major features and they're starting to work a bit cleaner with each other. There might be some elementary art assets in there. Not everything might be animated. There'll be a bit of color. Some minor features might be starting to get worked on, but you need to understand that this isn't a releasable game. Beta or early access, depending on where you sit, is where the game is much more feature complete. The majority of the major features are done. The minor features are being worked on, and there are a lot of bug fixes being worked on as well. A lot of the art assets are in and being worked on consistently as well and being improved on, but it is much more palatable to the average consumer or player. And release is obvious. It's where you believe that you have completed the game to a stage where most of the big bugs are out and the game is ready to be released and distributed online or physically, however you guys do it. What you need to do is you need to define what features, what minor features, what animations, what art, what UI, what polish, what testing, what goes where and how you're going to structure your development. Now that you have a firm understanding of what your major features are and what your milestones are, you need to set yourself a release date. When you set yourself a release date, it needs to be achievable and you need to not change it. The way we set ourselves a realistic deadline is we break our milestones down even further. Now, depending on how long your project is going to take you, you could have weekly sprints, monthly sprints, bi-monthly sprints, but however long it takes you, you're going to have to sit down, you're going to have to structure all of the individual tasks, what is critical and core for your prototype, what is critical and core for your alpha, and so on. And using a development methodology, you work your way towards achieving those goals. Most developers and studios take an agile approach with development, meaning that they will structure their work into sprints where they have envisioned target by the end of a certain period. And what they do is they break up that period into smaller periods and then those periods into smaller chunks of work. By that, I mean if the period is 1 month long, then they take that month and they break it down into 4 weeks. Each of those weeks, they put several tasks in there which don't exceed the capability in hours of the developer or developers within the team. And then each developer works towards completing each of their tasks towards the common goal, which is the sprint. So you've been completing your task and you've been meeting your milestones. So now we're approaching the release date and it's time to actually release. Now this is the difficult part. You need to sit back and compile your game, whether it is 95% complete or 80% complete or 70% complete. And you need to release it on a platform that you deem it's worthy to sit on, whether it be Steam or itch.io or on a website for your portfolio. This is a difficult step for every developer because what you are doing is you're putting out months of your hard work and your commitment and your drive and your passion and your vision to an audience that might not even receive it or might not even know it exists. It's always difficult, but the own reward is you've finished a game. If I haven't said it already, I'll reiterate that no game is ever released that is completely finished, that is bug-free and that is perfect and feature complete. The developers always had something more in mind, or there was always room for improvement, or there was always something they could have done. Don't think that if your game is unsuccessful, it's because of this that you failed. It's not necessarily that. It could be a number of things. You might not have marketed it well. It might be too niched and might have too small a market. Or it could be your first or second game, which isn't necessarily going to be the one that blows you up as a huge indie developer. Just be happy with the fact that, hey, you've finished a game and you're part of a very, very special club of people that have finished a game, because 90% of game developers don't actually get to this stage. Now, guys, if you made it this far into the video, I really appreciate it. If you could like, share, subscribe, hit the bell, do all of that, really appreciate it. I really do want to grow this community. What I want to see in the comments below is anything else that you guys use to help you guys finish your games, because anything we can share with each other is only going to help to create more and better games. Next week, I'm going to talk about 10 mistakes new game developers make, so stick around for that one.